the Apocrypha Chronicles. Episode 1, The Last Gathering.
Pulling inwards, losing strength, and learning.
The last large gathering that I attended.
The last gathering before lockdown.
My last
I guess
big gathering.
The last gathering I had in the before times. Honestly.
Bonjour, Waubgeshig Deshnakas, Makwat no dem, Wasaksing don Jaba. Hi there, my name is Waubgeshig Rice. I'm a member of the Bear Clan of the Nishnabek Nation, and I'm from Wasaksing First Nation originally, and I currently live in Sudbury, Ontario. The last major gathering I attended before lockdown was a winter music festival here in Sudbury called Bloom, and that was taking place at the Grand Theatre in downtown Sudbury. It was a pretty big show. A few hundred people were there, and the lineup...
So the last time I'd say I was gathered with a group of people was at a tattoo studio. I was getting a piece on my leg. I remember I was a little grumpy that day when I walked into that studio, and though I have other tattoos, this was a parlor that I had really come to enjoy. The people were really lovely.
My name is Tyler Simpson, and the last gathering that I attended before lockdown would have been March 12th, and it was our final show at the Metropolitan Opera before things closed down. We were performing the opera Così fan tutte, kind of a fun opera.
Coronavirus had already made headlines around the world by that point. I guess it's kind of sad to think that was the last show for a while, because we're not really sure when concerts are going to happen again.
We talked about whether it was hype, whether it was real, what was going to happen, what was going to happen to their business, what was going to happen to my work. It's kind of strange that I was doing something so physical and close contact right before going into 3 months where I couldn't really ever touch anybody again for a long time.
We easily could have had 4,500, 5,000 people at the Met that night, which seems almost impossible to imagine now. I can just very clearly remember the feeling that we all had even that night. Things were starting to feel strange in the city. As I would walk home, I could sense that people including myself, were starting to feel worried.
The last gathering I remember was actually a night I had out by myself. My partner had a performance that night, and I was supposed to go to his performance, but I stepped outside into the streets of the Upper West Side in New York City, and the city just had that feel about it. And I decided to blow off the performance and go to one of my favorite restaurants right by our house. I just remember walking down the street and kind of like really enthused and energized by the city, but also a bit nervous because we were starting to hear about the pandemic.
Right before lockdown, I was in a very creative environment, surrounded by really lovely people. I walked home. I remember it was cold. I was wearing dungarees and boots. And my leg was throbbing, and I usually take a nap after I get a tattoo because you've had so much adrenaline rushing through your body. And it's almost like I fell asleep, and when I woke up, things had changed, and a decision had been made that I wouldn't be seeing people again for a really long time.
And I miss, frankly, how fun it was to be around others, especially around that many others, to look out and see the smiling faces in the audience.
And I remember that nap kind of bracketed the pause between then and now.
It was pretty heartbreaking, I would say.
Things had changed.
To hear the orchestra and to hear the other singers and
then things changed, and I spent the next 3 months in isolation by myself.
The last big gathering that I had was striking the show mid-run.
You could feel and see the nervousness, but you could also feel that sense of, we're gonna go through this together. It's gonna be bad. We know it's gonna be bad, but let's take care of each other. Let's look out for one another.
Things have changed.
Even though we sold quite well, people just weren't turning up. So we got a vibe, like folks are scared.
I went down to Queen Street West to attend a protest rally event that was protesting the pipeline on the Wet'suwet'en territory. It was a very moving event, full of music.
A lot of the cast just came out for the strike anyways. I think that was really good for a group morale, so we can be together and share that space, and it was coming together to go apart.
It was wonderful to be around people. I remember walking home from that event in the snow. I was wearing a really bad pair of shoes for the snow. They were kind of like going out boots. And I was slipping and sliding all over Queen Street, just trying to get home from that. I mean, that was back when people would, put on some nice clothes to go out to an event in a big city. It was kind of a thing we thought about. And I really like those boots, but they've just been sitting in the closet gathering dust. So, pretty trivial to point that out in the face of everything.
Sense of unknown in the air, which was it was really palpable.
In hindsight, the best kind of departure that I could ask for. Just generous people that were all grieving together for what is happening in the world, but also the loss of this really special project.
Things had changed.
I pushed my way into the bar. It was still so crowded. It always looks so inviting because the light is orange. And I remember I sat down beside this woman who was wearing this enormous faux fur coat. She looked like a giant Yeti teddy bear. I remember her fur coat kind of brushing up against my shoulder, and I was in such a weird mood that I just sort of felt like giving her a big hug. I didn't, but I also remember
I remember we were getting murmurs about what was going to happen at that time.
I went to a farm.
Murmurs of a lockdown.
We spent a lot of time talking about what was going to be happening, protocols, and everyone at the farm decided that there would be no more visitors coming.
We weren't sure about how long that was going to last and if we'd ever be able to see our friends again, and so we were maybe we can squeeze in one last little hangout with a few friends.
And I carry on to a ramen bar. And again, I have that feeling when I go in that There's a little bit of nervousness. All the windows are open, so it's a little cooler in there than it normally is, and it's a little too early in the season for the windows to be open.
I remember there was this sense of definitely, like, when will we see each other next? We're not going to be allowed to be traveling.
The conference almost didn't go on, as you can imagine, because of COVID. I went for selfish reasons, and I met fellow queer writers. Talk about a large gathering. It was standing room only.
It was very scary. There was sort of like this pending sense of unknown in the air, which was it was really palpable at the time.
If I knew then what I know now about the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have gone. Pandemic.
I remember I had a notebook with me, and I started jotting things down, things that I was going to do, things that I was excited about. I still carry that practice forward, actually, of just keeping a pen and a notebook with me to just jot down quick thoughts. And it's been a bit of a lifeline carrying me through the pandemic.
Remember.
Pandemic.
And then we did this sort of like dance in the kitchen with the cans that I just bought from the grocery store. And it was fun. And there was a jam. Like Annie brought their fiddle, and Jillian whipped out the guitar. And both Dee and I had turns on the piano, and we just did some improvised singing. And
I was actually performing. I was at the Burdock. Took an Uber there with all my gear, and Mel, my wife, joined. And we just hung out at the Burdock after and listened to everyone else's set. It was so great.
It was in Peachland, British Columbia, and it was an event called the First Ladies of the Okanagan Tea and Bannock Celebration.
So that was like the last time performing live in public too, and seeing everyone and sitting close to everyone, like in the audience.
It was just a remarkable day. There was opera, dance, Indigenous and non-Indigenous food. It was just a profoundly beautiful, moving, emotional day.
It was pretty dark, but I could still see faces. I could kind of like feel the heat coming off of all these bodies. It was really exciting to just feel that heat of the lights on my face, and to know my loved ones were also, and friends and colleagues were also in the audience too.
Live music is something that I definitely miss, so I'll hold on to that memory of that live show here in Sudbury on that early March evening, and I guess hope and cross my fingers for a return to live music again someday.
Yeah, just thinking about how many aerosol microbe things I was sending out into that small space as I was singing opera. But yeah, it's crazy now what goes through my mind when I sing, or I'm singing near people that aren't in my little bio bubble.
Remember. Pandemic.
The last gathering we attended before lockdown was a funeral. My husband's grandpa's funeral. My husband and I had to travel to Vancouver with our new baby. He was 2 months old then. And I remember it was a big deal about whether or not we were going to go because it was already the beginning of March. Most of his family hadn't met our son yet. Everybody was able to hold him, and even though it was a sad day, there was a happiness in the air that there was this new baby around. We all gathered back at the house after to share stories and food and tears.
About a week later, the whole world came crashing down.
And it's interesting now, the Grand Theatre, it's a popular nightclub in downtown Sudbury, and on their marquee now it says "Party alone now so we can party together later."
Because of the pandemic, because of everything that's going on health-wise, it was certainly the last time in a long while that I'll be going to the States, and that makes me sad.
I remember Nana just getting to hold the baby and just sitting at the other end of the table watching, all of these different generations of family together, and that was really nice.
It's quite beautiful to me to remember that was the last gathering that I had, and that it was so meaningful and so spiritual, and it's quite emotional revisiting it.
We've not really seen most of the family, most of like anybody since.
It's a weird time, but I've learned a lot from it. Jackson out.
I hope we have chances to get together and party together again someday soon. Okay, chimiigwech.
Remember. Pandemic.
What the sporocarp was that? Okay, get a grip on yourself, Fee. You're standing in the woods, off net. How did this old digital tech just start working? I've heard recordings like that in the archive, but never off net. I've got to tell Elder Lar. I've got to get to a mycoport.
So much learning, and now we wait to be sensed.
These are the Apocrypha Chronicles. You heard Rae Takei as Fee. Other voices by Mela Pietropaolo and Stephanie Wong. Original music by Benton Roark and Jessica McMahon. Directed by Stephanie Wong. Written by Jessica Schacht and Paolo Pietropaolo. Audio producers Natasha Aziz and Paolo Pietropaolo. Mixed by Natasha Aziz. Creative producer Melanie Yeats. Executive producer Debi Wong. Artistic directors Debi Wong and Benton Roark. This project was produced by Renaissance Opera as part of IndieFest 2020. Special thanks to the following artists who contributed their stories about the last gathering they attended before the COVID-19 pandemic. C.E. Gatchalian, Teiya Kasahara, Fathima Mohiuddin, aka Fats Patrol, Heather Pawsey, Waubgeshig Rice, Benton Roark, Jessica Schacht, Tyler Simpson, Nancy Tam, Stephanie Tritchew, Jackson Y. Chung Tsi, Debi Wong. For further details, please visit apocryphachronicles.ca. Very special thanks to Victor Guerin for sharing his knowledge of the Hunkaminam language, and to River Blondin Burt for sharing their imagination. This podcast was produced on the stolen lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The Apocrypha Chronicles was made possible through generous support from the City of Vancouver, Creative BC, and the Province of British Columbia. Renaissance Opera acknowledges the support of the Canada Council for the Arts. We also acknowledge the Government of Canada's support for IndieFest.